Hey everyone, welcome back to the High Five a Day podcast. Super excited for today's guest here. We have Grace Lewis, author, serial entrepreneur, and TV personality. So excited to get to talk to her today, hear more about her story. This isn't the first time we've been on the podcast together. We recorded about a month ago, had some technical issues, and so we're coming back for some redemption here. But Grace, super excited to have you and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk to you.
Well, just kind of going back, I've heard your story now a couple of times and I can't wait to actually get it out to the world. So let's just start there. You're doing so many big things. You're a big entrepreneur. You're helping so many people. You're about to publish your new book and launch that. But what's the storyline that's gotten you to where you're at today? Where did you start? Where have you been, and have you gotten here?
Oh man, that's a in-depth question. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to answer that in this 45-minute podcast. No, I'm kidding. So for me, I started out very, very humble beginnings. And I, just worked my way up through it all. But humble beginnings, and really had to fight and struggle to get where I am today. But really proud of where I am today, and it's been a bumpy journey to say the least, but it's definitely been a tremendous learning experience and something that I wanted to give back, and that's part of the reason for writing the book. I really wanted to share with the audience what I had gone through, and hopefully be able to use that as a pillar of hope and understanding for other people that are going through that right now.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about in the past as we were kind of preparing for this in our previous conversations. You talked about how telling your story was the most important, kind of your last piece of being able to accept your full self. And so kind of tell me a little bit more about that, what that kind of means.
Yeah, well, acceptance is hard, it's like you say that, accept yourself, and it seems well, of course everyone accepts themselves, but I think that we have a lot of deep-seated stuff inside of us, whether that be trauma, past history, just there's a lot. We're really complex individuals, right? So for me, I guess it was kind of putting everything in one place. I have a lot of respect for authors now and people that write memoirs and these type of books, because it's not easy to put everything into one place, and to sit down and really dive so deep into that, and really you're diving into remembering all this trauma that happened in the past and how you climbed out of it. And, it's forcing you to relive and really get deep into those things again that I haven't thought about in a long time. Huh. So it was definitely not an easy process, but it was a process that I learned a lot from, for sure.
And how does it feel? I know I hear authors talk about this a lot as you go through the editing and the proofreading process. How does it feel, to take that personal story where you're sharing all these deep personal things and have people hey, you need to change this and do this and this needs to be fixed and we got to take this whole part out. How does that feel after you've poured your heart and soul into a manuscript?
Yeah, I mean, when it goes to the editor, they're wait, you shouldn't put this in, or you should put this in, or talk more about this, and it's well, I didn't want to talk about that trauma. I didn't want to remember that trauma. And then, you're forced to go really deep back into it, and maybe relive it for the fourth, fifth, sixth time. And, as I'm through the process, the book gets edited and then you have to read it again. And then you're checking for grammar. So you're you're going back through and reading this so many times, and it's almost like an out-of-body experience. Yeah. Because when I was sitting down and writing it was my story, I was this is what I went through. But then as I'm reading it, it's almost like, I'm separating from it. Like, God, this is such a sad story. Like, this poor girl. And then I'm like remembering at the same time, I'm like, that's me. Like, that was actually me. And I think that through life, like, I've just done so much growing and changing and challenging myself to be better and to separate myself from my trauma, like first heal from it, but then separate from it. So it's not a part of my story today. Like my story today is very different than if we were doing this when I was 16 years old, right? Or even
Right.
20 years old. So and I think that's a good thing. Like I'm not a big believer in like being a victim, right? Like I did not take the victim mentality. Like I chose to fight through what, cards were dealt to me um and it wasn't easy because obviously the easiest way is to be like, hey, everyone feel bad for me, but like at
Yeah.
some point you run out of people to feel bad for you. And that just wasn't my personality, like it was no calculated plan. It was just like, I decided young, I was like, I'm not going to be the victim. Like, I'm not going to be the product of what my parents, my biological parents, chose for me, like, I didn't choose to be brought into this world. That was a choice by two adults,
Yeah.
And then as a kid, you're just all of a sudden like waking up into this world and you don't know anything different. You don't know that there's a different world out there. You think like everybody's friends, their parents are, fighting every day when they get home from school. You think like all your friends, like all your dads are punching your moms, like, the cops are getting called. Like you just think it's normal because you don't know, your world is so small when you're a child.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, I'm not gonna live like this, like I don't want to be scraping up quarters to go buy a pack of cigarettes, from the store, which is something that, I would see my mom doing often.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna live in an abusive relationship. I'm not gonna be homeless. Like, I'm not gonna do so many things that I was subjected to as a kid. And I was absolutely never going to bring kids into the world unless if I was able to offer them a stable environment. And so, I worked really hard to move out of that life and into the life that I have today and, into a more stable environment. And I think when you grow up in trauma, you're always going to be somewhat damaged. And to be honest, like that sucks and it's super unfair. And for a lot of years, I really struggled with accepting the fact that life isn't fair. Like I'm a person that even to this day, like I really choose fairness over all else, and I think it's because like when even there's little things going on with like family, friends, social situations, coworkers, like I'm like, well, that's not fair. So we're doing this, like I
Yeah.
always go back to that. And I think because, the reason why I do is because I suffered such an injustice when I was young and never got to experience what fair was, that I'm like, not, I'm never going to do that to other people. So
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing, coming from that background, but producing for yourself a future where you're able to control that outcome for other people. To be able
yeah,
to say like, I couldn't have this, so I'm going to give it to you and provide that for as many
right.
people as possible. So I think that's just such a cool thing. And as you were going through all those things, did you have, someone that you could depend on, someone that like was your rock and your guiding hand during all that experience
you
in your
know
childhood?
it's when I was really, really young, I always had my grandma and like I loved her, like she was kind of always the one that would like show up and like take me from that situation, that hell that I was living in
Yeah.
daily, and give me like little drops of normal, like, hey, we're gonna go to a movie, like, hey, like, you are gonna dress in clean clothes, like, hey, you're gonna have a hamburger at Big Boy or whatever it was, at the time. And I don't even think Big Boy exists anymore, but yeah, like these little normal things, like you're gonna go to a restaurant and eat, you're gonna go to a movie on your birthday, like those sort of things. So I, thankful for her because she's truly the one that gave me those little drops of normality. Like, but she also didn't live close, so it didn't happen often. But when it did, it was a huge blessing. And she was definitely the one that when I was a kid, like she opened my eyes to another world. And I'll tell you what happened. As a matter of fact, she actually came to pick me up for my birthday one year, and my parents had been fighting, and my mom was all beat up and like hiding from her. And they, of course, like gave me this story of what I'm going to tell her when she arrives, because I spent my entire life like living in this alternate reality as a child.
Right.
Like it's like what's really happening is not happening. You don't tell anybody this. Like you're almost like trained like a soldier in a certain
Yeah.
way, because it's like and you get really good at a lot of things. Like you get good at being deceitful. You get good at lying. You get good at, like separating home life from like how you're supposed to act at school, and obviously like that's crazy, to like expect a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, to do those things. Like it's, even talking about it now, like it's just, again, like it's so far in my past, but like it's so what makes me me today,
Yeah.
like it's a strange thing. But yeah, so anyways, she went to came and got me for my birthday. I'm like sticking to the story that my parents told me to tell. Of course, like she's not dumb, like I was young, like I was a kid, but she was obviously an adult and knew what was going on. So, because this had been going on, my entire life. Um, and yeah, so basically she like, hit the brake. Like we just leave the house, we're like pulling down the dirt road, and she like hits the brakes, and she's like, normal people like looked me right in my eyes. And this is like my nice, sweet, awesome grandma. And she said it in like such a serious voice. She's like, normal people do not live like this. And it was like a moment in my life where I was like, oh, thank God. Because at the time I was thinking, like, is this what I have to look forward to? Like, this is what a relationship is. This is what family is. This is what life is. Like, this is hell.
Yeah.
So, like, but again, you just don't know anything different. So when she said that and she, like, opened this curtain of, like, wait a minute, this is not normal. So, like, my other friends don't go through this, like the kids at school don't deal with this, like this is not normal. Like, and I knew obviously deep down something about my circumstances was not okay,
Yeah.
but again, like if you don't know any different, you're conditioned to it. So yeah, but that was like a big day for me. And ever since then, I was like, oh, I'm not living like this. Like it was just something that like it ignited this fire inside of me that even as a little kid, I was like, I'm not living like this. And I just knew. I was like, I will not choose this for me. And obviously I had no idea, like what was going to happen in my future, and I've stumbled along the way, but I definitely, I mean, it was a tough journey, but that was definitely like a definitive moment in my life that I can say was very life changing.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think it's just reminding me. I remember I had this like really distinct memory from my childhood when I was probably about the same age, probably 8 or 9. I just remember we had some like neighbor kids over, and we were like in our backyard. And I grew up in pretty typical middle class family. Maybe sometimes a little more upper class than lower middle class, but just pretty typical middle class. And we had these friends over one time, and they were just in our backyard with us, and they're like, "Man, you guys must be rich." And I was like, "We're not rich. Like
Yeah,
isn't this what everybody has?"
right.
And I mean, I don't think I really thought about it much in that moment, but it's obviously stuck with me. And it's just especially as I've grown up in the last few years, I lived in Central America a couple of years ago, and just seeing what people don't have.
Yeah,
But I think the biggest takeaway is you can have little, but if you have a lot as to the people around you and the relationships and the connection, you can be so happy. You can have so much abundance, because that's really, really what matters. And I think that's the saddest part of that story that you've shared, is that you didn't have that and you didn't even
right.
realize it was a possibility.
But what's crazy about you saying that is like, I don't know if you felt like this as a kid, but like I remember like always thinking to like I don't know where it came from or like where it manifested from, but I remember like when I was like 10, my parents were fighting, typical. So, I come home from school and it's my birthday and I was like really excited because I was turning the big double digit, like, I like that was a big birthday for me for some reason. And I literally come home and they were fighting with each other. And because they were fighting, like no mention of my birthday, no cake, no, nothing. Right. And like, we didn't have a lot, but like, I mean, it still was like nobody's even going to tell me happy birthday. And I literally spent my 10th birthday just like hiding in a room, trying to avoid my parents, like wondering if they were going to stop fighting because it was my birthday, which
Yeah.
they never did. But, I remember like in that day thinking like, like this is pretty crappy, but like somebody out there probably has it worse than me. And I think like I've always held on to that, because that was like a really painful day, just like feeling so worthless and so
Mm.
unimportant on a day that should have been so important. Um, and again, when you don't know a lot of people when you're a kid, it's like what your parents think, what your siblings think, what the two friends at school you have think, what your one teacher thinks, it's a big deal because you only know 10 people. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I somehow like harness that feeling of just like somebody else has it worse than me. And every time in life that I felt like things were unfair and like just things were really chaotic and going really wrong for me, I was like, you know what? It could be worse and somebody has it worse than me. So like I'm going to be thankful for what I do have. I'm going to be thankful I'm still alive. Like I'm going to be thankful that I have a choice in this situation, like whatever it might be.
Definitely. And I mean, gratitude in and of itself just will change any situation, any perspective and
Yeah.
mindset. So,
Yeah.
to be able to take that out of it, from a young age growing up into, adulthood, it's a powerful mindset shifter and adjuster.
Yeah.
And so obviously you've taken that circumstance and you've completely flipped it on its head. Um, and if I remember right, as you were kind of finishing out high school, you left home and moved across the country. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just, I was in a situation where I needed to get away from everybody and everything. Like I lived on my own since I was 15 years old, like just turning 16. I was living with a friend. But that wasn't a great situation. And so I started hanging out with the wrong people. Like I saw myself like starting to get, like dabble and get potentially getting in trouble. But like I I didn't have any trust for like authority figures because
Yeah.
like they had disappointed me so many times before, like the few times that I did overcome the massive amount of fear to like tell somebody what was going on and ask for help, like those people didn't come to my aid. So,
Yeah.
therefore like I lost trust in teachers. I lost trust in, the authorities and police, like I didn't trust anyone. So yeah, like I kind of just started dabbling and, getting in like things that I could have gotten in trouble for.
Right.
And, I remember I went to this store with a girlfriend of mine and she stole some stuff and she got caught and I didn't steal anything. Like I was so afraid to steal my entire life because I stole this barrette in kindergarten and I felt so bad about it. I'm like still not over it. I literally felt so bad. By the time I got home, I told my mom what I did. And then she's like, take it back to the school tomorrow and give it to the teacher and tell her what you did. And because I was honest and like brought it back, the teacher's like, all right, you're not going to get in trouble. But I just remember like I was sick to my stomach. So I'm like, I'm never stealing anything again. Like the guilt will like overwhelm me. So anyway, my friend's stealing some stuff and like I'm with her, so we both get in trouble. And granted, like they decided to let me go, but I was like, if I get in trouble with the cops, like I'm never going to be able to leave Michigan. Like I'm going to be stuck here for life. And those sort of things. And like I just saw like all of a sudden, like this cage being put around me, like that if I get myself into legal trouble or like get mixed up with the wrong people, like I'm just going to go down the wrong path and like I will not have the option to leave anymore. So I was like, I'm out of here, you know? So yeah, so I like finished school and then I was like, I'm out, you know? And it was really my only option. But in doing that, I was really able to like reinvent myself. You know, I had a lot of people in my life because, like, as a teenager, you know, I was living on my own. So I was a kid, you know, like dealing with adult issues, adult emotional issues, finance issues, you know, like
Yeah.
all this stuff while still trying to fit in high school. You know, like it's not normal. Like it's almost
Nobody should have
impossible.
to go through it.
Yeah, you know, like and I found it very difficult to like waver in those worlds, you know, like I was like, it was just really hard. Like, I'm like, no, I have to leave school, you know, 10 minutes early because I have to go to work today. You know what I mean? Like, and I would tell my teachers that, and they were like, you're nothing but trouble. Like, you're gonna, I literally had a teacher to, I'll never forget it. I literally had a teacher tell me that I was gonna end up as a stripper or an alcoholic because I was unruly, like, and I wouldn't listen. And I'm just like, lady, and like in my mind at the time, like she was probably, I don't know, like 40 or something, you know, but I remember thinking, like, lady, you have no idea what I've been through. And like, I'll show you, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of like, that was another fire, you know, like it kind of ignited this fire of like, I'm not going to be what everyone expects me to be. But the reality is, when you get a reputation of like being a bad kid or, you know, that sort of thing, it's really hard to break out of that. And that's why I think so many kids, you know, when they're told they're the dumb one, they're like, fine, I'm just going to start failing because I'm the dumb one. You know, when they're told that they're bad, they're a bad kid, it's like, okay, well, now I'm just going to start causing trouble because you guys think I'm bad anyways. You know, and it's like, it's just, you know, it's a normal reaction, but it was like the only way, I just knew the only way for me to be the person that I wanted to be was that I had to be strong enough to leave everybody and everything I knew. And and I took that step and did that. It was super scary. And like today, would I get in a car and drive across the country with no plan? No. You know, but like I think I was young enough and reckless enough and I had been through so much at that point that I was like, well, it's not going to be as bad as what I've been through. So I'll
Right.
take my chances. You know, it was kind of like, I'm sure, I don't know, I can't remember what I was thinking, but you know, that's probably what I was thinking, I would guess. But I think that's really important to note that, like, you know, don't allow the people in your life to determine who you're going to be. Like,
Yeah.
reputation is very important and you should treat it with care. But as a kid, you're not necessarily choosing your own reputation. You know, like a lot of that's chosen for you. But once you reach the point of accountability and you know right from wrong is when you start creating your own reputation.
Yeah.
You know, and that is important, and that's something like that's when you get to break the mold and say I'm going to be different, you know, and not allow people to determine who you're going to be as an adult. And you know, and I found
Well,
myself in that situation and it was heartbreaking, you know, and I had to run away to get out of it, you
right.
know, and that's like, and I just feel so bad because I know what that was like. And I know that there's so many people that are going through that right now and so many kids that are dealing with that right now. And it's just, it's so unfair. And it does, you know, it doesn't even have to be like you're coming from a bad situation, you know,
Yeah.
like it can be any situation, you know, like that you can find yourself just stuck and everyone assumes that's what you're going to do or who you're going to be. And it's really hard to jump out of that mold and reinvent yourself.
Yeah. No, because you know, you grow up and you live on, you know, the expectations and the plans of others. Because, you know, as a kid and as a young person, you don't really know what to expect and plan for yourself. So you just kind of ride that train, and then all of a sudden you get to a point where you can't
Yeah.
depend on those anymore, and you're like, okay, what do I do? And
Right.
I've learned so much about the fact like if we go back to old environments, just subconsciously we'll start to act in certain ways that maybe we haven't,
Yeah.
behaved in years. And I'm sure if you had gone back to Michigan and back to your home, it probably would have completely changed, what you were building for yourself. So just to
Well,
see,
go ahead. Sorry.
oh, just to see like the determination, the discipline, and the trust in yourself and the faith that you had to do that, obviously has built you into something so great.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I'm glad you brought up faith because that was something we actually talked about before. And that was something that we had discussed. And I don't remember exactly what I was saying before, but, we as spiritual people, like we're taught to have faith. And I wasn't
Right.
always spiritual, but um we and what does faith mean? We talked about this. So what does faith mean? So faith, the definition is to believe in something that you can't see, right? It's to
Right.
believe in something that's not a material object. And so we have faith, we have to find faith within ourselves. And we have to find faith and we have to let go of the fear of what other people are going to think of us.
Mm.
We have to let go of the fear of what we're going to become. Like sometimes fear can be a good thing. And we see that in that story that we just talked about, right? The fear of becoming like where I grew up was
Yeah.
so scary and unacceptable to me that I was like, I will take my chances anywhere else. And that's an example of like fear being a good thing.
Yeah.
But, so like every emotion has a place in our lives. We just have to learn how to control it and
Right.
where to put it and how much power to give it, you know? And in that same moment, like I had to turn that fear into something else and turning that fear into having faith. And at the time, like I didn't know much about spirituality or God or anything like that. But I knew that I needed to trust myself that I would create a future for myself that I would be proud of.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that looked like. I had no idea what that was. It was like just, this imaginary thing. And, but it's important to remember that we need to have faith in ourselves, like let go of the fear of failure, let go of the fear of what others might think of us, and remember to have faith and that it's our journey, it's our walk as an individual. And after you reach the point of accountability, every choice you make is leading you in a certain direction, and it's taking you to a certain outcome. And it's another reason why I never feel bad for the victim, because
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, like we all, the victim mentality, like it's like we all make choices that get ourselves into certain situations. And sometimes you find yourself in a situation where somebody else acts really wrong. Yes, but we have to do our best to keep ourselves out of those situations, you know? And yeah, and for me, I just was like, I'm not going to, hang out with these friends, get caught stealing something, end up with some sort of, court case, like legal issues, and
Yeah.
then I'm just like my parents, like who were in jail for, my younger years. Like it's it's so crazy. Like, and less people that grow up in difficult childhoods, like they, depending on your situation, but you have less than a 5% chance of making it out and living any sort of normal life.
Yeah.
And that's like if you have support from people, so, but like I'm living proof that you can literally do it on your own. Like if you want to bad enough, you can find a way and do it on your own. It's not going to be easy. And, it's like a lot of trial and a lot of mistakes and learning the hard way. And you're just like banging your head into a wall a lot of times. But, you just have to keep fighting.
I 100% agree with that. I think, kind of going back to the example of your teacher that, told you you're going to be all these things. That's what she thought. I
So
think, I think it's exemplifies a couple things, but I think one is that, we need to be careful about what we project onto other people for what they're going to be.
yes,
Who are we to tell somebody that like you're going to be this, you're going to be that, especially if it's something like negative.
yeah,
It's like who are we to not give everything we have to uplift people and
right,
support them and inspire them to do something great. I mean, it sounds like similar to you. I grew up in a really small town. It was like 5,000 people was our population. And then
yeah,
half of that population was the prison up on the hill behind the town. So it was like 2,500 people,
yeah,
super small place. And I, looking back, all my friends from high school, it's like most of them haven't left. Like they're still around there, just kind of live. It was a farm town, so like everyone's just kind of still involved in that for the
doing the
most
same
part.
thing.
Or
Yeah,
people are at school, but that's where they're headed when they're done. I mean, nothing wrong with that necessarily, but it's like, it was there ever some part of you that wanted to do more? And obviously, you've built that, you're doing that, so like it is possible. You don't have to play the cards that you're dealt to start with. You can get a new hand. So,
right.
what is it? What are the different things you've accomplished? Obviously, you went out, you left home, you moved out, and you've built some things. But what are those things that you've built and accomplished?
Yeah, I mean, I started a business. I became VP when I was 33, so that I was really proud of that. Like I climbed the corporate ladder, against all odds. No, I mean like, there was a lot of naysayers that I'm sure didn't think I was going to be able to get where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just all through, really hard work and determination and having faith in my ability that I could do it, even if I wasn't the smartest one, that I would still work the hardest. And I think like when you have that determination to achieve your goals, you're, you know, that little fire it keeps coming back that like when you have your that determination, like you can truly achieve anything. And I mean, I got told no a lot of times. I got fired from jobs, like I went and got another job, a better one than I had. Like it was hard. Like I had people tell me that I wasn't doing well enough, that I wasn't this, I wasn't that. But I had a lot of determination, and I knew that I was good enough. I knew I was different from everyone else, and while that has brought me a lot of sorrow in my life, it has also brought me a lot of joy. And I've found that being different from everyone else is okay, and it's actually
Yeah.
awesome. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that I am. But yeah, I mean, the corporate battle was tough. I now do like personal development coaching so that I can help other people through whether it's, through being a woman in corporate or trying to build something in the business world, being an entrepreneur. I bought my first house when I was 21. So I started investing, and it was like, another crazy thing I did. Like, I didn't know what I was doing buying a house. Like, and I remember they gave me the keys, and I was like, I drove over there and I got sick to my stomach. And I was like, I cannot believe these people let me buy a house. Like, I can't have a house. Like, again, I was so young to have a house, and especially like no support to like maintain that. Like nobody to like teach me how to do stuff, like fix stuff, like how to pay your tax bill, like all these things that, like a lot of people are like, I'm just going to call my parents and they'll tell me what to do. Like I never had that option. So yeah, but that's why I wanted to, again, like write the book and get into personal development coaching and stuff, because I wanted to give back. Like I didn't want my story to be a secret anymore. And we talked a little bit about, how like it's scary, to put yourself out there like that. But at the end of the day, I decided that I don't care what anyone else thinks, that like I'm so proud of who I am and where I came from. And for a lot of years, I didn't feel good enough, and I was trying to hide where I came from, and like I would never talk, like when people would ask me about my parents, I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah." Just like wouldn't say much, but like acted as if everything was normal. because I like, how do you tell somebody you work with that sort of history? You can't,
Yeah.
and I'd been judged for it so many times. And people hear that you come from a traumatic past and they immediately judge you and they assume there's something wrong with you and that you have all these problems. And like, you know what? We all have problems. We all have problems. Like, I don't care where you came from, because it's our own reality and it's our own perception of how we perceive our lives, right? So just because I started with less and I came from worse doesn't mean that I haven't made it farther in my developmental phase than some people that have maybe come from a middle class family who have done little work, if any, on themselves their entire lives, you know
Yeah.
so it's not about that. And I think for me, like, I was really afraid for a long time to share my story, but then I realized, like, it's my story, it is who I am, it is who it's the pieces that make up who I am. And you know one time I heard, like, that, our heart's like a vase, right? And it's like we're overflowing with joy and like all the good things that like we do from our heart. But sometimes, like, every bit of trauma or like bad thing that happens to us, like, it can like chip or it can break or it can crack or you can even like lose a handle. But that doesn't mean that you can't glue it back together. And when you reinvent it out of that dust, you can create something even better than what you had beginning with. And for me, I know that's what I've done. Like, I had to totally break myself down. I had to truly accept like where I came from and who I am, and just understand that if people are going to judge me for that, like, that's a them problem. It's not a me problem,
Yeah.
and that's something I hold on to really tight, because it's nobody else's place to judge somebody else who they are today, and it's hard not to do it, right? It's like
Yeah.
hard not to take, we obviously like are given intuition and things for a reason, so, but I mean, I think for me it was just really scary, and that was kind of my final step of, and it started after the first show I went on, actually.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so like doing TV, it was crazy. Like, I filmed the show and then I was like, oh my god, I'm so excited to watch it. And then I started to like think back of some things that happened during the show. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh my god, I wonder if they're going to show that, and I wonder if what did I say when that happened, and like, I hope I didn't say something stupid, and like, you start like doubting yourself.
Hmm.
And there was like this moment right before it aired that I was like, I have to accept this, no matter, like, there is no changing this. You know what I mean? Like there's nobody I can call to be like, don't put this on TV. There's nobody I'm like gonna call if like I don't like an episode, right? Like, so it was kind of crazy, like, that was a moment where I had to get really real with myself. And I truly believe that, like, everything is put in our life for a reason. Nothing is without purpose. Every single struggle, every single positive thing. And that was such a positive thing for me, because I had like dreamed of being on TV ever since I was little. And it was just always like, I loved being in front of the camera. And it was really something I always wanted to do. And I finally had the opportunity to do it. And they say like God will never give you more than you can handle. Well, obviously, when I had the opportunity when I was in my early 20s, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And that was for a reason. And I wasn't ready to like truly accept me for me at that point, you know? And so it came at a time in my life where I was strong enough and mature enough and comfortable enough and had enough value within myself that I was like, all right, let's do this. Like, it is what it is. And that turned a page for me, where I started to just accept that, like, I'm different than everyone else. Some people aren't going to like me. Some people are going to like me. And if people don't like me, like, I have no ill intent, so that's a them problem. And I started to really like adopt that thought process of like, stop taking on like everyone else's issues, because if somebody didn't like me because they thought my personality was too strong, or like I was too loud or I was too direct, I'd be like, oh my God, let me go back in the mirror and examine myself. Like, because I've done so much internal work that I'm like, maybe I've missed something.
Yeah.
And while that's a really strong part of me to be willing to like self examine before anything else, it can cause you to have some doubt, you know? So, like, then again, you have to learn how to readjust that. Self examination is great, but you also need to trust yourself and trust your instincts, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like it's so funny how just the human mind will take one person's opinion that like we don't even
Yeah.
know, and us all of a sudden just have to like reshape our entire life because this one random person said like
Something,
you're
whatever.
different, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. And it is crazy how like people say things and you never forget it. You know,
Yeah,
like there, like you mentioned one, I've mentioned a couple, like there are things in your life that people say. And so like what should we learn from that? Everybody has that experience. So what should we learn from that? That our tongue is a super powerful thing and that we need to be really careful with it. Say less. You know what I mean? Like say less
definitely,
if you're unsure. you know?
definitely.
And that's kind of one of those things like that. I think because I am so outspoken, it's something that I still work on every day, right? Is just like be careful what you say, like I'm proud of myself for being able to share my opinions for sure, because a lot of people aren't strong enough to do it. But it's like you can't go too far, right? Like so it
Yeah,
has to be wrangled in a little bit, like speak if you're saying nice things, but like if you have something negative to say, like you need to wait, before you speak, and say less if you're unsure. And that's a big lesson, and it's something that recently I've been, dealing with and learning.
yeah. No, I think it points out a couple things that we're always learning new things. We're always having new experiences. We never stop upgrading ourselves and making adjustments and fixing things, which it's kind of a double-edged sword. It can build us up super super greatly, but sometimes we'll take on too much,
Yeah.
and it's a self-destruct sequence. But I think too, when we start sharing who we are and we start doing it, not just a small scale with just the people closest to us, but we just are that person everywhere. I think more than anything else, you start to attract all the people that like you
Right.
because they have commonalities in your differences. They are different in that way too in a couple of things, and so you connect that way. And then you have all the other people that throw rocks at you because they don't like who you are, but
Right.
you have
There's
other
always
people
going
that
to be
like you.
haters.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like not, and that's okay. Like that's okay if not everyone likes you. It's okay if not everyone likes your podcast, like
yeah,
it's okay, like, but the like you said, you'll attract by being yourself and by not being afraid to be you. It's like you will attract the type of people that you need to have around you. And
yeah,
I think when you're like trying to fake it or whatever, you're trying to adjust for other people, you end up with people in your circle that really aren't there for you, you
yeah,
know? And so you have to be really careful of that. And yeah, I think, when you choose to like do something like that, like go on TV and you're like, you're public, you're putting your world out there like publicly, it's tough,
yeah,
and so that was just another big step that like pushed me in the direction of like having the strength to write the book and tell my story to help other people you know
yeah,
and I think something I learned in life that was really valuable to me, and I thankfully learned this pretty early, but um it's self-worth, and not to allow other people to determine how you feel about yourself.
yeah,
And, you know, it's like if you can't wake up every day feeling like I'm a 10, like if sometimes, like for me, it's like if I miss a gym day or, there's something on my list of stuff to do that I choose to neglect to do it because I'm too tired or whatever, like I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, dang, I just should have done it,
yeah,
because then I'm like, I feel like a 9 today because I didn't keep the promise I made to myself which was that I was going to go to the gym and do this whatever task, you know? And those small things are what really like true, and I think people don't realize it, you know. It's like those small things that we promise ourselves we're going to do, you know, like I'm going to drink enough water today, like even simple things like I'm going to go take the dog for a walk because he hasn't been on, you know, a nice jog for, you know, a week, like whatever it might be. But it's like if we don't keep those promises to ourselves, it affects our value within ourselves, it
Yeah.
affects our confidence. And you know, it's super important to be able to wake up every morning and say, I'm a 10. You
Yeah.
know, I'm a 10. I'm doing what I need to be doing in my life. I'm proud of myself, because being proud of yourself, nobody can take that from you. And I think when I taught myself that, because that was something I was lacking in my life. I didn't have any parents, you know, and in the times I was subjected to them, there was no time for anyone to be proud of me for anything I was doing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Even after leaving, it was like I was a problem because I left, you know. So it's like nobody was ever proud of me. And it was always
Mm-hmm.
something I was like searching for. Like I always worked extra hard because I wanted my boss to be proud of me. I always like worked out at the gym extra hard because I wanted my trainer to be proud of me. You know, like I had that coming, but it was like coming from a traumatic place, not a
Yeah.
positive place. So I had to find a way to shift that, you know, like, because then if the trainer didn't say good job, then I would not feel good enough. And so we can't allow other people's opinions of us to determine how we feel about ourselves, you know? And so that self worth thing was really a pillar in my life that I use on the daily basis. You know, I always wake up and ask myself, like, all right, how are we feeling today? And then if I wake up and I'm like, I'm a 7, I go back through my mind and I'm like, why? What did I
Mm-hmm.
do to make myself feel like a 7 today and not a 10? You know, so I'm in full control of my confidence, of my value in this world, you know, and it makes you kind of like unshakable in a way,
Yeah.
you know, like it's like if your parents don't feel proud of you for what you're doing, like all of those sort of things like affect us in life. You know, our
Mm-hmm.
friends disapproving of who we're dating, like those sort of things. Like it's all these little tiny things, but when you truly value yourself, those opinions become a lot less important.
No, definitely. I love the way, I think it's Alex Ramosi. I'm gonna butcher his wording, but he says something to the effect of, you know, like create just a super high stack of irrefutable evidence for yourself that you're great, so that
Yeah.
like you can't deny it, nobody else can deny it, and when other people tell you that you're not, you have a stack of evidence to say to yourself, like, I know I'm great. Like, maybe I don't
It's
feel great today, but I'm great.
Yeah. And like it's funny you say that because I always envision it. Like I'm a very visual learner, so I always like have, you know, visuals in my head, but like I always look at it like when you do something good, you're like putting a penny in the good penny jar. And when you
Yeah.
do something bad, you're put, you know, and there's like a scale, right? Of like, so like that's exactly what you're saying. Like stack that jar, stack that evidence to yourself that you know you're awesome, you know. But it's like if you're making a lot of bad choices for your life and you're doing a lot of things in your life that are unhealthy and that you know you shouldn't be doing, like then you're stacking this jar, and then
Yeah.
it's really hard, you know, to unbalance that. It can be done, but obviously it's going to take a lot of work, you know.
Yeah.
But
No, definitely.
no, I think that's a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, no, I think it's so true. I think especially for people, you know, as really they're starting life, they're starting adulthood, and they're coming to the realization like, oh, you know, all the other adults around me don't know what they're doing, you know, to the fullest extent. They're learning just like me. Um, it's you have to start building that for yourself so that you have something to go back to, something to hold on to when you go down a path that's kind of lonely. You have to kind of become your own rock.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, like we need to remember that like our life is equally as valuable as the people around us,
Yeah.
right? And everyone gets one shot to live their life the way they want to live it. So, you know, as I've gotten older, I've definitely been very proud of my choices more so now than ever because I'm living a life today that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
And so what I would say to that to like the younger people out there is just remember that like your choices are going to lead you somewhere, and that your life is just as valuable as your parents or all these other people that are pushing ideas into your mind.
Yeah.
So, take all of the information, but be careful how much weight you put on each thing.
Yeah.
And, we hear about midlife crises, right? And I never understood it. And I was like, those people are just unhappy. But it's like the older I get and the more friends that I have that like are older than me that are like going through things, and it's like, oh, now I get it. Like you married somebody you didn't want to because your parents wanted you to have kids. So like the clock was ticking on you. So you felt that social pressure to do that. So then you ended up marrying somebody you don't truly love, and that's why you're getting a divorce, and now your kids are without. It's like something that I know a lot of people in my life have experienced, as an example.
Yeah.
So it's like that's why I say it's just really important to make sure that, like, I'm not saying like don't listen to anyone in your life, like they're there for good things too, but like just be careful how much weight you're putting on others' opinions in your life,
Yeah.
and make sure you're doing what's truly making you happy, because it's your journey, it's your path. And at the end of the day, if all of those people were removed and you were standing there in a room by yourself, like, how clear is your path going to be?
Yeah.
How happy are you truly going to feel? So, as a very independent person, that's the advice I give. No, but I mean, yeah.
No, I think that's awesome. I think that's a great point to end on, that, you can listen to everybody. And you should listen to everybody for the most part, especially those that are close to you. But you don't have to live or apply everything that they share.
Right.
It's there for a reason, and some of it's going to be valuable, some of it's not going to be, and it's up to you. It's your prerogative to figure out what is and what isn't going to work for you. Some things do
Yeah.
great things for you, and other things just aren't going to add at all. So, I think
Yeah.
that's a perfect point to end on. I've loved this conversation. It's just super insightful every time getting to hear from you and your wisdom. But before we end, is there anything else you want to go over, Grace?
No, I mean, I think we nailed it.
I would agree wholeheartedly. It's always super awesome to get to talk to you. For anybody that's listening wants to follow you, be ready for your book launch. Where is the best place that they can find you at and see all that?
Yeah, so we're developing a website right now, which should be done soon. But I would say get me on IG first, because that's where all of the information is coming together now. So,
Perfect.
and that's Grace F. Lewis, and Lewis. And yeah, and then everything will kind of be posted on there, and then there'll be information and links to the website and all that good stuff. So that's kind of the landing point for now.
Perfect. Well, I'll be sure to be sharing that with everybody on on my feeds, my future listeners as it's coming out. So I'm super excited to see it, read it, listen to it. So super excited for everybody that's been listening. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope you've learned a couple of things, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.